Hi, my name is Georgina Pazcoguin, and welcome everyone to What's the Tea, a daily conversation with a dancer of Asian descent for the duration of May to celebrate Asian Pacific Heritage Month. And today I have my friend Daniel Applebaum. Yay, welcome,
Hi.
Daniel. I'm assuming I know who you, well, who are you, if in case we have some crazy rich Asians out there who are going to donate, and we suggest that you do donate to an arts organization or any
Mhm.
organization, would you like to shout out one right now?
Definitely New York City Ballet, where we're both soloists, and um, yeah, I feel a little funny, kind of asking for money in this moment, especially as someone like you who is in a privileged position of making money still. But I think it is important to realize, like, essentially what we're fighting for at the end of all of this. Like, what do we want the world to be? And a world for me without live theater is not a beautiful place.
Right.
So
It's
please
so
donate
it's
to New York
so
City Ballet.
yeah. Just the idea that like the arts is what's getting people through right now, especially when
Yeah.
entertainment and books are saving me right now on poetry.
Yeah.
And these tracks are good. So I think it's totally important. I think it's not if you have the money to spare, great. But even if you've bought tickets, like just consider donating the cost of tickets.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I know a lot of institutions are offering refunds, but like I think that they would accept that as a donation. So that's something that's like already money already spent. So
Yeah.
that's a good way to look
Yeah,
at
you
it.
already budgeted for that, so it's like think of or it's also like if you think about it like if you don't donate the ticket, the organization might not be there when you want to go back to it in in the way that you appreciate it. Obviously, New York City Ballet I think is very well funded and isn't going anywhere, but any non-for-profit art organization, no matter how big, needs help, especially right now.
Yeah, yeah, you're well said. So it's been a minute since we've seen each other in the studio.
It
I just
has.
want to check in. How are you doing? What's going on? What are you missing right now? How are you adjusting?
Um, I'm okay. I'm with Mark Anderson, who's also in New York City Ballet. You know Mark, of course. And we've been very diligent about kind of maintaining a schedule. And also, if that doesn't work out, it's like really okay. I got injured in the middle of our winter season with a plantar fascia tear, so I've been dealing with recovering from that remotely, which has been kind of tricky. Cameron Gomez and Dr. Novella have been really great about it all, but it's weird when you can't just have someone like hold it or look at it with an ultrasound and kind of tell you, oh no, like it hurts because that's what happens. It's sore, or it hurts because it's bad again and you need to like lay off. So it's been complicated, and also it's hard because I can't go for a run really. I can't get my heart rate up like in a cardio way. I can't do bar. I can't do any kind of ballet dancing, which is kind of usually where I can kind of focus myself and center myself. So it's been challenging, but a learning experience for sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, being injured sucks in general, but also one of the things that I am also missing right now is that tactile feel of like a physical therapist or being able to get massage therapy or, like acupuncture. I didn't realize how much I had relied on that just I, as like not only like body maintaining, but like as a single woman, I was just like tactile feeling and stuff like I didn't realize that was my source of touch
Yeah.
for like a lot of things.
But also, like, I've been kind of dabbling with yoga, and I'm like no expert at all. But it is interesting. You realize like there are certain parts of the body that just like hold emotional tension and all of that, and like sometimes you just like can't get to it yourself. Like you need someone to like get in there and release it. So you're still like holding on to all that emotional tension that just like builds up because of all of this.
Well, then that, and then coupled with the fact that you are injured and you've got all this extra pent up energy already. So like I've been dealing with
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Frustrating. Um, Absolutely frustrating. So I I don't even think I know this. Can you let our viewers know what made you start dancing?
Um, I saw a performance of the Nutcracker when I was probably 7, maybe 8. It was like a local production, and it ended up being the studio where I started training. And I remember seeing it and being like, "This is so pretty! Like, I love the tutus." And my mom and dad were very supportive, and I would always like dress up in dresses and stuff. And I think they were just like wanting to make sure that I wanted to do it, not because like I thought the tutus were pretty, because I think they were aware that I wouldn't get to wear one. They were like, "Are you sure you want to do it?" And I think in my mind, I kind of had a split second moment where I was like, "No, I kind of want to do it because of the tutus," but I was also really contrarian at that point. So I think I was like, "No, I want to do it because I want to do it." I didn't want to like let them have like the best of me. So I kind of lucked into it, but it worked out.
What was what's your first memory of ballet class? I feel like you're just like the most adorable.
I remember I went in and like it was a local studio. They still auditioned you, but anytime you were a boy, they were like, "Oh my God, like a boy is here." So I remember like sitting down. They would like stretch your feet, and at that point, my feet were like very nice. Like time has withered them away, but I remember them stretching it, and like the like teacher's eyes like went wide, and then she like called another person in, and then that was it. So then I got it.
I love that. And then what was the actual moment or was there a moment, sometimes for some people there aren't, so that you were like, all right, I can actually do this as a career. I'm going to be a professional dancer. Was there like a key, was there a moment in time, a memory, an instance?
Well, if you want like the real story,
Yeah.
I had always wanted to like move away and go to boarding school. And my grandmother was like a really small time donor at SAB. She probably donated like $100 a year or something. But I think with that, you get to go observe classes like once a year. So she would take me because I was dancing at that point, and I was just like, "This is perfect. I can dance. I can move to New York, and that sounds amazing." And I was probably like 10 at the time. And then freshman year of high school, we had to do the science project, and I'm deaf in one ear. That'll come up later. So we have to do the science project where you write the like practical or like what you're going to do freshman year, and then you have to do it sophomore year. So I wrote something about like spatial hearing and testing people like who can only hear in one ear versus 2 ears, and it was like a good idea, really way outside of like the realm of possibility for me. So I was just like, "Oh shit, I'm gonna have to do this next year, so I gotta get out." And obviously, like I love dancing, I love ballet, but there was definitely just like this weird impetus where I was just like, "I am not doing this project next year. Like I need, like now is the time to move."
Which seems like a really fascinating project, but you were just like, let me go pick this other, the alternate choice was this also seemingly impossible
Yeah,
career that's
exactly, and
very,
that's what's
very,
so
very
weird.
hard.
Yeah, I don't know
It
why
just
like
tested you to
ballet
do
seemed
it
the
in
easy way
you.
out. It like absolutely is not the easy way out. But like in my mind at that point, I was just like this or this. I was like, "No, I can do ballet. Like that's easier." Obviously wrong, but
Fascinating. No, you're just demonstrating how much of a rare breed we are. Like we are down to work. Like he just didn't want to work that hard.
exactly. I was like, I don't want to do that
Or
because that's boring work. But I want to like, and also, but then
you're
I
like, I want
guess,
claps. I want applause.
yeah. But I mean, in all honesty, I was very serious about ballet at that point. Obviously, I wouldn't have been able to even get into SAB. Um, and I had already been to the summer course the previous year, and it was, I don't know, like I always I was lucky because I grew up by the Kennedy Center, so lots of companies came, and I got to see lots of different companies. And I always knew I wanted to be a ballet dancer. I don't know exactly. I don't think I always knew what that meant. A lot of people from my old studio ended up going to Juilliard, so for me, like that made sense. Even though obviously now I know that like the trajectory for Juilliard typically isn't a ballet company, and it wasn't. I loved ABT because that was the company that came the most frequently, so I got to really know all the dancers there. And when I came to New York and I first saw New York City Ballet, it was, I've talked about this before, but it was this one performance with Janie Taylor in Dewdrop, my first year there, and I was like doing the when you look at after the kids, what they call them, the supervisors, and I watched her do that from backstage, and I was just like, I remember so clearly the way my skin felt. It felt like hot, and I'd never like felt that from watching something before. And I was just like, this is exactly like what you should feel like when you watch something.
Well, that's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Um, and now look at you, the soloist in New York City Ballet.
Oh.
Um, so, but can you let our viewers in on your ethnic and cultural heritage, and to what degree do you feel connected to
Yeah, I my mother is Japanese. She moved here in I always get the story wrong. She moved here for college because she had, I think, taken like a gap year or something, and then she went to study in Hawaii because she was like, I want to learn English and I want to live in Hawaii. It makes sense. And my dad is Jewish, and I think he went to Stony Brook, and then he wanted to be an Asian studies major for some reason, and that he went to Hawaii, and that's where they met. And I think it's interesting because my dad is they're separated now, but he's very connected to Japanese culture, as is my mother. So I think like in a strange way, like through both of them and both of their perspectives, I became very um, attached to it, and like I definitely love so many things about Japanese culture, Jewish culture as well. I mean, the jokes and everything, the food, but Japanese culture is definitely like a very big part of my life, I would say. I mean, I wish I spoke Japanese. Little things like that, or big things like that, obviously upset me about kind of the way that I was introduced to Japanese culture, but it's definitely a big part of my life.
it? Right. I mean, like it's one of my biggest regrets that I don't speak Filipino or Tagalog.
Yeah.
And my dad was like, I chose to not do that, and I was like, why?
My mom,
But
I don't,
because
I
you were
think she just kind of thought that I would learn it from like her speaking it. And like in a pinch, whenever we tour to Japan and like if something's going wrong, like it just comes out. It's in there
oh,
somewhere, but like I can't access it unless there's like a lot of drinks or like an intense fear.
that's a really. I know that there's a story there. We're gonna get that for the outtakes. So, do you feel like your cultural and ethnic heritage has now being like a very established professional dancer? Do you feel like it's informed your work and your choices as a dance artist?
I think it's interesting because I remember, and I don't know if you felt this way, but like, um, I never like knew that it was like that is the wrong word, but I never knew that being of Asian descent was something that other people wouldn't be into until I was probably like in high school or something. Like I remember being like so proud and thinking it was like the coolest thing that I was half Japanese, that I had a Japanese passport, like XYZ. But it wasn't until high school that like that kind of became like a thing that I realized, oh, this is not to everyone this beautiful thing that I think it is. There is like, so there was an element of like shame that kind of like developed with that and that part of the my who I am. And I think that also like what you're doing with this wonderful project too, like seeing how our cultures are represented doesn't really give you like a lot to kind of aspire to. You know what I mean? Like I was never going to be someone who was going to do Chinese in the Nutcracker. Like that just wasn't. So like that was like what I was seeing as a possibility for me, and like I wasn't like blonde and 6'5". Like Cavalier didn't seem like it. You know what I mean? So it was a little confusing, kind of just trying to find yourself. And it's not that like there has to be roles specifically for your race, but it's not seeing yourself there made it hard to kind of place yourself there. And then I'm sure you experience this too, like people being like, oh, well, like hearing other people be like, oh, well, you look like her, you'll do this, or like you're this type. But like if you don't have that type, or if people only want that type to be what they see in front of them as opposed to kind of what's inside, and they don't want to like look at what's inside, which I think is fairly easy to do when someone's dancing.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
It can be a challenge. So
Yeah.
I definitely
I
think
mean,
like I don't know if that answered the question, but it's definitely something I had to find myself just being like okay with this is exactly who I am, and then hopefully someone is going to cast me.
Right. No, I mean, it's just, it's a very, it's such an interesting, because you're not the first person to say, like, I grew up, and I also, like, I didn't even think of myself as, like, biracial until I got to SAB. Like, it wasn't even
Yeah,
put in my face where I was like, I don't look like anyone else, and that's made me feel other. Not like bad, but I
yeah,
think, like, other's a good
yeah,
word. And I think it's at that point where people want to put you in a box. Society always wants to label you as something, and then you're like, well, I'm American, but I also have this culture too. So I'm like, I'm both. I'm not half of each. Like
yeah,
I can claim both, but don't not like it short circuits their brains because I know that's not clean enough. That's not like we
yeah.
want to put you here. like it yeah. So
And it gets
that's
complicated if they want to put you here, but that here doesn't exist, and then you're kind of just like, womp, womp.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and so you teed me up for the next question, really, awesomely. So it's how do you think the ballet world is doing in terms of race and representation now?
I think that it's like a really hard question
Oh
because
yeah,
one, obviously, there's many ballet worlds. Russia isn't the United States. Paris isn't the United States. Like there are, a handful of very successful dancers who are of many ethnic backgrounds, which is fabulous and something that I definitely didn't see when I was growing up watching ballet at all. It's just like one a generation, basically. So now the fact that we have like you and like Hiso and Misty and like the list goes on and on and on of like really successful Taylor like dancers of multi-ethnic backgrounds is very heartening. But I think at the end of the day, there's still somewhat anomalies in the overall look of how the ballet world looks. And I think that, especially with SAB, I have to commend them for doing such good work about trying to bring in more kids who don't look like the kids that used to be exclusively at SAB. You know what I mean? They're doing amazing work in trying to broaden the diversity of the school and make it look more like the world looks, or at least like New York City looks.
yeah,
But I think, unfortunately, too, because ballet is a slow thing, you start when you're 7, you have to then stay interested until you're 18, and then you get a job and you get to start working. So it's like SAB is playing the long game, and hopefully it'll pay off, but we don't really know until probably the next generation. Because I don't think we'll see a big shift in our generation while either of us are still dancing as ballet dancers, just because it is kind of a slow game. And you can't just like all of a sudden hire somebody, yeah, who doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Because they
yeah.
have to have the training and training, access to all of that stuff is a financial burden, and a thing that not everyone has access to. So,
Right. It's not a like check the box, like okay, and it's not an immediate fix, but it's like it's really great that even like there was a time that you and I could not even sit down and have this conversation.
oh
Like
no,
it just like yeah, and you and I both know what that experience. We've lived that
yeah,
experience. It's like
oh my God, I
I've been
remember,
to walk up to you or Alan and say something, and I just was like, oh yeah, someone else is gonna hear that, and I'm gonna be fired.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
I mean, but it's
I
funny
didn't
too
mean to
because it's just
talk.
like, wait, no, sorry,
I
go.
didn't. Were you gonna share
Oh no,
something
no,
though?
no, 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 go.
Well, I was gonna ask you to say. Well, that all this being said,
Mhm.
and your scope, and of course that like, of course I know, and I want the viewers to know that like, being in New York City Ballet is like an all-encompassing thing, and in our own unique ballet world is different from the global ballet world. But it doesn't mean that you haven't had a chance to like see peripherally, and like what you're speaking from is your own experience, so no one's gonna take
Exactly,
that
yeah.
out of context. Do you
Oh yeah,
feel
everything
like
is just my own experience. I'm not trying to like I'm no expert.
No, yeah, and that goes without saying. This
Yeah.
is obviously we're talking to you because you have a unique perspective.
Yeah.
Um, so
You're like,
in
no, no one thinks you're an expert.
saying
Don't worry.
that, oh, okay. Well, I think I know the answer to this, but are there any instances in mind where you felt that you experienced discrimination and that you feel comfortable sharing, and do any of those tie into having had to be asked to do Yellowface in ballet?
Specifically those yellow face roles that we do see a lot. I've never been cast in them. One, usually because they are like, I would say, against type for me. Like I'm not, for some reason, like like an Asian man is always presented as like either comedic or super bouncy and like lots of virtuosic tricks and things, which were like that was never going to happen for me, like which way or the other. Um, there was one ballet where there was a character part that was Yellowface, inexplicably. It was originally done for Gen Horiuchi, and when they brought it back, and there was no dancing, it was a character part, and it was set in like a fantasy world, and he played like a judge's clerk or something. So literally no point to make him Asian, other than the fact that Gen was Asian. So when they brought it back, it was a full like Mickey Rooney thing, Mickey Rooney and Breakfast at Tiffany's thing, and you remember this. It was crazy,
Yes, I
and
do.
I remember that I was still in the corps at the time, and the two other Asian men in the company were Anthony Huxley and Alan Pfeiffer. All of them, I believe, I think they were both still in the corps too. And everyone in the company, in the corps, was involved except the three of us. It was almost like they knew and they didn't want us to have a reaction about it. And I just remember being like, that is so crazy. Like, I didn't want to be in that ballet, of course. Like, I wasn't mad about it, but I just remember thinking, like, that's super weird. Like, it's super weird that the three people not involved in like a corps that basically doesn't really ask much of the corps are the three people of Asian descent. I thought that was weird.
Very, very interesting. Interesting point. And I do think that the ballet you mentioned, like Phil does bring up in his book that it was one of the points that he brought up when he actually went in to talk to him about, and he shared
Yeah.
a very painful experience with that particular moment in New York City Ballet's
Yeah.
history.
So it was like, it kind of blew my mind that that happened. Like that part existed.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess there were other things. Like a ballet master called me exotic in front of an entire room of people and told me that's the reason I was cast for a part. Like things like that were kind of just like, okay, like this is, I guess, how it's gonna be. I mean, I was probably like 20 at the time, so like I had no wherewithal to say anything. But were you in Mother Goose?
Oh yes. Yeah.
Do you remember? That
Will
was
talked
my
about
favorite
this.
thing that ever happened.
And then I had for some reason I had blacked out in my mind that it was like Alan who was asked to replace Will.
It was the craziest thing.
Will, and but what was crazy is that Will, I felt so bad about that because it was like his friend, and but like Will, I totally think Will was so courageous in that moment. I think it was I told him I was like, it was one of the first
Oh yeah.
examples where I had someone standing up for themselves, and I was like, wow, okay, and it wasn't
Oh,
even
absolutely.
a thought, and it didn't come from a place of anger, and that's what's like,
No, he
Phil and
was
I talked about
so clear about why he didn't want to do it, and like it was so brave, and I just like that moment is really like seared into my memory. I was like, wow, like that's so impressive.
yeah. And as far as yeah, I've been called exotic too many times to tell like the questions of like, where are you from? Like, I'm from Altoona, Pennsylvania. And like also, BCAS parents. Were you BCAS parents?
Oh, VCAS parents, of course. I think one year I got switched to A, but I can't remember. But yeah, I think I was A like 1 year, and I was just like, oh, like I was like, I pass. No, I'm kidding.
Sort of.
but that was a thing too. I
Oh,
remember like the idea that like you could pass, you could be like maybe you were Hispanic, maybe you were something else, like maybe someone wouldn't think that you were Asian. Like that I remember was like definitely a thing growing up that like was almost like, and by growing up I mean like past when I was in like high school, like kind of a source of pride in the sick way, you know, like why would I want to like the fact that like someone might not think that I was Asian, or like the way that some people and good friends would say it like in certain moments, like, oh, I never really even realized you were Asian, or I never like thought of you as Asian, like taking that as a compliment is just like so gross now in retrospect, like feeling
well,
that way.
yeah. Also, yeah, because you've already expressed how like deeply special being Japanese felt to you, and still is to you, and it's
Yeah.
like it's like intent versus impact as well in our approach to having conversations. Difference didn't mean to be offensive, but like it's they did, but it's the impact on you made you feel like, wait, am I okay? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? It just like made anything that makes you feel like that in general is like not. It's not okay to be made to feel,
Yeah.
and you can and like now I would never let any of that fly.
Oh no, absolutely not.
So
And it's, you know, it's crazy because like I've been watching a lot of like Asian film during the quarantine, and I was like,
mhm.
I just wish that this was a bigger part of my life growing up because like seeing not just like the like splendor of like the mise en scène and like how like beautiful like all the costumes and the hair and everything is, but just seeing like these people are actually like physically beautiful, like stunning,
Oh,
and to like have that representation too. So like to feel that like there is the possibility that you can be like Asian and attractive was like not something I feel like I as an Asian man had much like access to, whereas like you probably had like access to it in a very toxic way where it was like overly fetishized and like all of that. But
yeah, over sexualization of
you know,
my gender as that. Like I'm always like the dragon girl. Like I was always like
exactly.
I talk about and I talk about how Romeo and Juliet was so painful for me because I felt that it was this like absolute sexualization of my exoticness. Like I like the nurse was
Well,
never
you
a hot
twice. Let's not forget what's the other one you did. What's Ocean's Kingdom?
ocean came. Yeah,
You were
and
always
but
just
like
like the sexy maid, the sexy evil maid.
yeah. So it's definitely a stereotype that I've been trying to like. And yeah, like yeah, I'm a very sensual person, and yes,
Yeah,
like I have that part of me, but it's like it shouldn't. I shouldn't. I'm not just that, and it's like I am very much like you and I are capable of the. You are capable of the prince roles,
yeah,
and it's just like the stereotype has a different cover on it doesn't mean
yeah,
that we can't step into those roles. I feel like it overshadowed what I was able to bring to the table in terms of
yeah.
technique and actual dancing. It's
Oh yeah, because at the end of the day, too, like you're casting something like that, it is a principal part. Like you still, even though it's terrible, you still want to do well. And then if you do well, it kind of just like doubles down on the fact that like you should be doing stuff like that, which is not the case, or only things like that.
right.
It's
I think
this
that's
weird
the
double-edged
some
sword.
people. It's not only things like that. This happens to be a highlight, but there are also other things that we could explore.
Yeah,
That's kind of the conversation that I think you and I are having right now in our point or in our careers right
yeah.
now. But I want to take it back to your parents. You said that they were supportive in getting you to dance classes,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little bit just like asking you why they wanted you to get into it for the right reasons. How did they feel about you embarking on this as a professional career?
Um, my dad, I think, was kind of always just like in awe of the fact that all of this was happening. Like, I doubt, like, he was like a kid from Queens that he ever thought that like he would have a son who would be a ballet dancer. So, and he was always very into things like his interests were very broad. And so I think when I started learning to doing ballet, he would go with me to the ballet sometimes, or he would like watch videos with me, and like he really made an effort to like learn to love it and appreciate it. So I think for him that was um, not really a hard pill for him to swallow. My mom, I think, being a Japanese mother, was like in constant fear of my financial stability. So like I think the only reason that she was worried about me being a ballet dancer was that I would not be able to like take care of myself. And I remember from like such a young age, my mom was just like to my brother, like, "You're gonna be a doctor and you're gonna marry a doctor."
My mom still wishes I could be a lawyer.
Like I think my mom loves the fact that I'm a ballet dancer, and obviously now like I'm very fortunate to be a ballet dancer who can be financially independent, and like that is a very very lucky thing, and I feel so blessed by that every day. But I don't think in her mind that that's what that life was, and I think now she feels even more over the moon by the fact that I'm a ballet dancer because I can do something that I love, and she doesn't have to worry about like if I can pay rent.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm happy that they were supportive, even if they didn't fully grasp the idea. My
Yeah,
parents were like that.
yeah, yeah. I think
Um,
it's just they like they both love beautiful things, and they both love to see their children be happy, and they both love. And that's the other thing about like what we were talking about before about like the importance of live theater. Like they neither of them had access to any of this stuff when they were a kid. Neither of them had a reason to like ballet other than the fact that their kid does it, which is a big reason. But like the fact that my mom is tuning in to all the New York City Ballet live streams, even when I'm not dancing, and so is my dad, and like everyone in my family from Japan is, it does speak to the importance of like why we're doing this and that it touches people, even if they don't know somebody out there. It's still amazing.
right. It's still a way to like suspend our reality for a moment and look at something that's absolutely beautiful and crafted
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
a peaceful thing.
yeah. And
I
to
want to
like
take
see
go
someone
ahead.
express. Sorry,
No, no, sorry. It was just
I
my
was gonna
moment.
say just like, and also just like see someone express something in a way that you can't. You know what I mean? Like that's why like I love going to see musical theater or like opera or plays. Like I can't do that, but like it's expressing something in a way that I can't, and like it connects me to that. And if it all just makes you more human, it's beautiful and like
Yeah, it awakens the soul inside. You touched on it a little bit in this past little discussion, but like, do you think that there's something other than access to it? Um, what else do you think might be needed to build? I think the three most important things are like a loyal, younger, and more inclusive audience.
yes. And I think that we're now in a unique opportunity to redefine the way arts organizations, non-for-profit arts organizations, function, and how we make our money, and how we cater to audiences who we haven't necessarily in the past um, taken as kind of a priority. To make it something that doesn't look like we're at the quality, and obviously all of that is still the same, but to make it something that people realize is a thing that is worth going out of the house and getting into a theater for. And I
Right.
think obviously if I had the answers to that, like I'd be much richer. But I think that that's kind of like the question is how do we not just try to go back to the same model of co- uh, going to older patrons and then hoping that they donate year after year and kind of subsiding on that money and endowments and stuff. How do we make it a thing that everyone wants to come to? Like this is a kind of a bad analogy, but how do we like make ourselves more like a Bernie Sanders campaign?
Right. I mean, like I did this discussion with a now good friend of mine, Alan Roth. He works with Glenn Fiddick. Is it Glenn Fiddick or Glenn Fiddick? I always say it wrong. Sorry, Alexander. But it's like a Scotch based in. It's been super traditional in its approach, and they're trying to rebrand into a younger audience, a younger base, a younger customer base. And we had this fascinating conversation because like he was like, ballet is such a traditional form of art, and like how are you guys doing it? And we got into it was like it's breaking down the like Scotch isn't just for like old white men of a certain age,
Yeah.
and it doesn't even you have to like throw out the tradition and the beauty and the ritual of what we've dedicated our lives to. I think that's all
Yeah.
very important, but I think we need to get the point across that it's no longer just for royal courts. I think we need to break down that idea of what ballet is. That it is ballet and dance in general is for it really truly is for everyone. And yes, like our ticket prices are generally lower than Broadway's, but I do think that like the days are gone of like the $500 ticket. It just can't. We
I
can't
hope
continue
so.
that.
No, no, it's awful. That's awful. And I think the other thing too is that like we don't. It can be so many things, like The Runaway is amazing. You were amazing in it. Like everyone was amazing in it. It's amazing ballet. But in order to cope to get to a younger audience, it doesn't all have to be like that. Like we can teach people that, you know, Webern, like Valentine taught people that Webern was worth listening to, younger modern audiences. And I think in that same way, like we can teach our audiences to learn to love, Tchaikovsky and Stravinsky. And there is beauty and there's so much soul and beauty in that and so much to connect with. And I think that it doesn't have to be, it can be both ways. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, like, we need the Kyle Abrahams, we need the people doing that, and that's so important. But at the same time, like, that's not the only way, I think, to attract younger audiences. I think there has to be some way to, I hate to use the word educate, but kind of like show people that this is, like, how can anyone watch Serenade and not just be moved?
Oh yeah, I know. Just music alone. How do you just
Exactly.
listen? And then put the like just like all the elements combined between lighting, costumes,
Yeah.
and it's like the hair up, hair down. It's so I absolutely agree that like there are. I don't think that ballet needs to go the way of the runaway.
Yeah.
Um, I think those are
But I'm happy that
wonderful.
that's
Like,
there, and I want that to still exist. But I think
oh,
my fear is just like, I guess my biggest fear would be like, because of all of this, like, will just exist. And this is no longer a comment on The Runaway. This is a completely separate thought. That ballet will just exist as like essentially music videos or something, like, because the whole point of ballet is that you get into a theater with other people and you collectively experience this thing that is happening for you in that time that will never be recreated again. Because that performance is the only time that performance is going to happen.
right. The ephemeral nature of the art itself is what makes it
Yeah,
so special. Not only
exactly.
in our careers, like the career is so short, but just like you said, this moment in time, I just hope. I don't think there's nothing that can replace that. And
No,
I do think that there will always be a place for that. And it's also something like in our media and them trying to find like the most perfect performances to showcase to the world because it's like out there. I don't want to see the most perfect performance sometimes. Like
no,
I think some of the most life changing transformative experiences I've had in a theater setting, whether it be like Broadway or the ballet, have been when things have gone awry.
yeah.
Like, and you're just like, what? I was not expecting that. And it's just like, it's when you see people say things, and no, you don't want anyone to get hurt. Like, I'm not talking
Yeah.
about like falling, having like the hair
No.
stop, but like I think that's what makes our art so special, is that like it is this pursuit of something that's completely unattainable. And how special are we to get to do that as a job, but also have gotten this far, and it doesn't come without sacrifice. Like you said, like there's injury and there's heartbreak, and but it is, in the end, it is so worth it to have to come and experience that in the setting with someone next to you,
Yeah.
because their experience is going to be totally different.
Yeah. I was watching this thing that a friend sent me from the director of the Guthrie Theater, and it wasn't about like asking for money. It was just like his message to the public. And he was saying all these wonderful things, like how theater has been around for, like 2,500 years, and like theater will always be there because it is part of the existence. What that looks like changes, but there will always be people gathering to watch something. But he was saying that there was a study in 2017 where they learned that people's heartbeats sync up when they're watching a live performance together. Like, that's how important it is to be in that environment. It actually empathizes you, like physically.
It's a unifier. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, great. Well said, too. All right. Well, we're already on the last question,
Amazing.
and I think that you will have a really wonderful response, because you've had just like this wonderful career. I hope that you guys come see Daniel dance. He is stunning, not only in the solo work, but in like, you're such a wonderful and gracious partner. And anytime we have been on stage, and you have shared the stage with me, like when
Many
I
times.
blasted in page 6. Like you have held my hand and picked me up off the floor so many times.
There is footage. Oh, we can post that.
Maybe that's the teaser for this article.
Yes, I think it is.
No, so like the question is, what is your advice for young dancers who are trying to have a career in dance? And let me frame this. Also, young dancers who might feel like they don't have a place for them because they don't fit that box. And it might also, like, thank you so much for sharing that you have a disability. I think that's something that is so amazing, like, because dance is so tied to music, and you have you obviously, this is not a huge, I don't see that it has hindered you so much.
Oh no, I don't really notice it because I'm lucky. I was born that way. I hear joke pun. I've heard that if you lose hearing in one ear, like when you've already had hearing in both ears, that can be super traumatic and really hard to get over. But as someone who's been deaf in one ear my entire life, it's not something that I kind of realize is even an issue. Like, I notice it when someone's trying to talk to me on this side of when I'm standing over here and trying to talk to me. I don't always hear them. Or the good thing is sometimes I can pretend not to hear them. But what advice? So I guess it's hard because like a lot of people are aspiring to be dancers, from the age of 8 to 10 to 20 to, so I think with each of those, there's probably a very different answer. But I guess if you're talking about people who,
I mean, it's also like, this is
don't see themselves represented. But yeah, people who don't see themselves represented and people who don't see that kind of box for them. There was a Suzanne Farrell quote from her, well, she said it at her summer program. I don't know if it's ever been written down. I'm sure so many people re-quote it. But she said, and it stuck with me for years, no one else has your eyes. And that just means you are who you are. And if you embrace that, and if you are so fully yourself, that's essentially all you can do. And you kind of just have to let the rest up to what's going to happen. You just have to be the best you that you can possibly be. So obviously you have to work really hard. You have to be lucky. I think we're all lucky, I don't think I would have been promoted had a lot of things not gone down recently. Like, a lot of it has so much to do with just timing and who's in the front of the room. But I hope that the world is changing for the better. I hope that a lot of these initiatives that have been put forth make a strong difference. I hope that seeing that like there are people like you out there give other people hope and give them that kind of like I want to be like her. But I think, and I don't know if you feel this way, the hardest kind of lesson to learn is that the worst thing you can do is to try to want to have someone else's career or be like somebody else. It's a dead end.
Yeah, I mean that is so beautifully said, and it's so it speaks to the point of like you can only be yourself, but also like how important it is to do the work to find out who you are,
Yeah.
and also how important it is to defend who you are and to speak up for what's important to you because like you said from a point of empathy, the, the people who you may experience like pushback from in life in general, and this has nothing to do with race. They see the world from a different lens,
Yeah.
and so in the space of empathy and talking about race, it's having that idea. It's not like a shame on you, uh, and in particular for our discussion with like Asian Americans who have generally been allowed in the room at least. I mean, there are
Yeah.
many other like ethnicities that have not even hit the mainstream. Like,
Yeah.
but
Oh, totally. Like we are. I mean, yeah, yeah. Sometimes it feels dangerous is the wrong word, but it's complicated because obviously we have to check our privilege, but it doesn't mean that we haven't, in many ways, still experienced a lot of gross shit. Oh, you froze.
realize that. Oh, did I freeze?
Yeah,
You're
sorry.
not frozen on my end. No, I think that's a wonderful point, and I think we all need to lift each other up,
Yeah,
like
definitely.
as a in a macro sense.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, this was a beautiful talk, and I am so
it
happy that
was.
you agreed to it, and
Oh,
we're
thank you.
going
Thank
back
you for
to
asking
it.
me. Yeah, I want to give you a hug. I miss you.
I miss you so much too. I want to thank everyone who tuned in today. And thank you, Daniel, of course. Check out our Instagram right now for the reveal of the Tomorrow Dancer chat and tune in at noon Eastern Standard Time for the conversation.